You know, you're probably thinking to yourself, what is this guy doing? Biting the hand that feeds you, criticizing cinematic universes as if half of his content isn't based around it. And yeah, that is kinda dumb. But I recently just heard of a really interesting interview with one of the old superhero actors. You see, this is Andrew Garfield. Yeah, he was Spider-Man a couple years back. Must have been really cool, right? Got paid a lot of money, got to play one of the best superheroes out there, and he loved every single moment of it. That's where the sad part comes in. He didn't. I want you to listen to what he said in this interview with Amy Adams, and I'll let Andrew speak for himself.
I was very young for a man. I was 25, 26, and I felt young in retrospect. And I'd only done a few films, and I was feeling so like in the right place. Yeah. And like I knew, like I was being guided somewhere. And doing the Spider-Man stuff, I felt guided into it. I knew it was the right thing for me to do. I learned a lot about what feels good and what doesn't feel good. And I was thinking about that today, actually. I was young, and I think it's a difficult, you know, not as young as someone like, you know, the young guy playing it now, Tom Holland, who's a fantastic actor, by the way. But there's something about being that young in that kind of machinery, which I think is really dangerous. There is something that happens in those, I don't know what your experience was, but my experience, there's something that happens, something that happened with that experience for me where it was, story and character were actually not top of the priority list ultimately.
Got it, yeah.
And
maybe
I found that really tricky. I signed up to serve the story and to serve this incredible character that I've been dressing as since I was 3. Yeah. And then it gets compromised and it breaks my heart. I got heartbroken a little bit to a certain degree.
Now, if you took that at face value, you'd probably be thinking, aw, he's so nice, so professional, no hard feelings towards Tom Holland. But if you really understood him, you actually heard him say, wow, Sony actually robbed me. I think it's entirely fine that they want to set up things for future movies. But at what point does it become overload? It's the studios that force stuff into these movies that make some of them feel rushed. I'm not gonna pretend like Sony or Fox are the only ones guilty of this, cause Warner Brothers does this too. And despite how much they get praised for it, Marvel Studios sometimes trips over this as well. I think the best Marvel and DC movies are the ones that hardly set up anything. Infinity War gets a lot of credit for being the big payoff to 20 Marvel movies. And sure, that's part of it, but honestly, it really works because of the narrative. At its core, it's not really an Avengers movie. It's Thanos' movie. He's the one that gets the most development, he's the one who sacrifices the most for what he sees as the greater good, and he's the main character. Even though it relies on your attachment to the Avengers from past movies. This one hardly sets up anything. The only real setup was the pager at the end, and that was only a post-credit scene. You could watch Infinity War and completely skip out on the next one and still feel satisfied. Some people might say the snap was a cliffhanger. I disagree. If Avengers 4 got cancelled tomorrow, if something bad behind the scenes happened, it's not too hard to believe that this is how the story could end. The Avengers lose, Thanos wins, the end. The same thing can be said for The Dark Knight or even Wonder Woman. They're so isolated from everything that you'd have to adamantly go out of your way to shove in a bunch of random references in there. I do believe that cinematic universes have some sort of leg up over those that are kinda their own thing. They're stories within a story. They have the advantage of having new stories being told by different artists, different directors, different writers, even if they hardly resemble the person they were before. If the development is done properly, then it works. That's all the good stuff. The bad stuff, however, is when it's not done properly.
Yeah. Oh, something is definitely bleeding.
No one's happy when their favorite character is treated more like a plot device rather than an actual character. It's kind of a spit in the face to the fans if you aren't really gonna do anything with your material. If they throw a bunch of ideas out there without any of them actually sticking, then it becomes obvious they're just doing that to sell more toys. They're not even making movies anymore at that point. They're making trailers to set up future trailers. And you'd think too, why would they rig their own project for that? Why would they want to milk a potential franchise that could bring them loads of money without putting any real effort into it? Actually, why not? Great movies nowadays are way too well written and overrated. Why make your film have a wide variety of highs and lows of gut-wrenching emotion when you can make it like Fant Four Stick where it's consistently boring? Too much studio interference, and you get the out-of-place plot lines like the Thor visions in Age of Ultron, the email files in Batman v Superman, the millions of Sinister Six Easter eggs in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. You have someone as talented, as gifted in acting as Andrew Garfield, basically confirming that the toys and the greed overshadowed the story and the character. How sad is that? I appreciate references to the source material just as much as anybody, but if that's your main attraction, if your film is incoherent as is and you still shove it in anyways, then you lose me. The main counter-argument that's constantly brought up is, if you don't like the movie, then be quiet because your negative opinion doesn't matter. But that somehow unironically defeats the purpose of silencing negativity.
Why would we do that? 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 Why would we do that?
Not only that, but it gives them an incentive to not even try. They already know they're gonna get your money anyways. Why would they try harder? Criticism comes from a good place. It's here to help these things get better. I think the idea of a shared cinematic universe is great. It's something we rarely saw of 20 years ago. It felt refreshing when we first saw it in the MCU, the X-Men universe, and even the DC universe. With all the trailers we've been seeing recently, I think the movie universes we have now are slowly working towards that. They're putting the writing first before the shoehorned Easter eggs. And that's great. I know some of you are aware of this, but you'd be surprised of how many aren't. Comic book accuracy does not equal a good movie. Thor is the farthest from being accurate than he's ever been. And yet, there are a lot more people that like him now than from before. They made him goofy. It added some charm to him. It worked. I have hope for the cinematic universes we have right now. Marvel seems like they know what they're doing, and I think they're past their Age of Ultron road bumps. The DCEU seems like they're going back to their strong suit, the more self-contained movies. And Fox seems like they're about to wrap things up with their universe. They're focusing on Dark Phoenix. I'd just hate to see the next Avengers movie, the next X-Men movie, or the next Wonder Woman movie get butchered from all the references the executives might be trying to cram in there. But that being said, they're all flawless. The costumes are so accurate, the actors look so much like the comic book characters. I give all cinematic universes a 10 out of 10.